Good morning. I'm out in my garden and I'm ready to shoot the late August garden tour. I can't believe it. I can't believe it's late August already. But here we are, and the garden is in full production. And yeah, let's take a look. These flower beds on the patio have just continued to bring me so much joy. This new little guy in the smoker is looking a little droopy because I didn't water yesterday and it got hotter than I was expecting. But I particularly wanted to point out these new pots with the coreopsis, these marigolds that were pulled out of another pot, and these just late petunias that are just loving life. This one over here is the same. And this coreopsis, it's this plant right here. There are perennials, the three in those pots, and then I have a yellow one as well on over here. And so they'll come back next year and they'll look more like this one does. They'll be full and fill up those pots. And the dahlia, my word. What is not to love? The green stalk is looking a little bare. I took all the green beans out of it. I clipped them out. Remember, when you are ready to take out beans, that you should always leave their roots in. They have the little nodules of nitrogen that they add back into the soil. And the marigolds are still looking great. There were so many strawberries. There's strawberries here, and they were all hiding in there. They had put out, there's runners. They had put out a lot of runners, so I'll be replanting those, and then in the empty pockets, I will be planting greens. The giant sunflower had to come down because there was a squirrel harvesting from it and it was making the dogs crazy. So down it came. And I have planted more sunflowers tucked in there with the zinnias. So we'll have more sunflowers here shortly. The herb garden is doing great. Just like every year, the rosemary is needing to be harvested and cut back, because, well, she would turn into a giant tree if I would let her. Just so happy there. The new sage is doing great. This bed, I am hoping will completely fill up with echinacea. It's looking it's dying back. I'm letting these die back so that they will drop their seeds and fill in this bed. I like the calendula, but I would like more coneflower. This thyme is filling in nicely and should fill in over along the path and just continue to fill in where these wood chips are. And the newer section of the herb garden is just doing great. The lavender are getting big, and all of these plants have done really well. I did try to I had a Roman chamomile that was struggling, and I tried to put it in right there, and it did not survive. It was a long shot. It was not happy, but everything else is doing well, is very happy. The zinnias are so much fun. And you can see back here and here that the liatris is blooming. Those are perennials. They'll come back next year, and they're bulbs, so they'll multiply, and there will be more of them next year. these marigolds that have stayed close to the ground are the same ones that grew up 3 feet. Why these didn't, I don't know. And these sunflowers have reached the 2nd story window. They're just starting to bloom. Here at the entrance to the garden, I'm still thinking about ways to make it look more like an entrance. If you have any ideas, let me know. I did put in these 3 sunflowers. They're getting bigger. The potatoes are looking great. Let's walk along the outside here. The patty pan is going crazy. There's one ready to harvest right there. I will be interested to know what the total number of patty pan harvested this month is. I'll do a video later about how I keep my patty pan alive and producing this long. And well, I have a few spots of powdery mildew. Mostly my plants are healthy and producing still at the end of August. The zucchini is the same. It hasn't been as productive as in other years, and we've talked about that. It is because of the damage done by the heat wave. You can see these plants putting up new growth are still, this plant is getting as much water as the one next to it, which is a patty pan. And they just were prematurely aged, and it was a strange year. They did still produce zucchini, but not at the rate that you expect zucchini to. So I've put some more sunflowers in, and I'm continuing to put sunflowers in throughout the garden so that we can have fall sunflowers. The loofah, well, I just don't know. It hasn't gotten any taller. I probably should fertilize it again. It does have, can you see that? The light is coming right in. Let's see here. It does have a tiny little something on it. So in a couple of places, I'm hopeful that maybe I'll get some tiny loofah. Look at these beauties. Oh, let's see. It's early in the morning. This is what the light looks like. It's 8 a.m. I do love these chocolate sunflowers. The dried beans are looking pretty rough. That's to be expected. We want them to dry out and die so we can harvest them as dried beans. All right, these sunflowers are looking happy and healthy. John Henry's pumpkins are doing well. This one right here is about the size of a beach ball. There's 2 more in there, another one back there. He has pruned them down to one pumpkin per vine. There's 4 vines. You gonna be on the internet, John Henry? Fine. He was not feeling showing off his pumpkins this morning. How are they doing, buddy?
Good. Except they're being kind of annoying. They keep producing little, not that large, little pumpkins I have to pluck off since I want them to get big.
All right. And we have fertilized once. And probably need to again, right? We're about due.
Yeah.
Back here at the entrance, this tomato is it's a brown berry. It's the one that I grew as a cherry tomato, and it's starting to look a little sickly, but is still producing a lot of fruit, and we do love these brownberry tomatoes. We also gave away a lot of these plants. I grew several of them and ended up only keeping 2. And we just keep hearing from people, what is this cherry tomato that you gave us? It's so delicious. And so again, it's called brownberry. It is my favorite cherry. I love to grow it and sungold. I'm hopeful I might get some sungolds before the end of the season, but I didn't grow any from seed this year. So over here I have the holy basil. It's also called tulsi, and it's getting big, and I'm hopeful to get a couple of good harvests to dry out of these 3 plants before the end of the growing season. The tomatillas are giant and wild and producing a lot of tomatillas. So these are not ripe, they're not ready, they don't have their bulbs in them, but the lanterns are so beautiful and make me happy. But we're gonna have, this is 2 tomatilla plants planted in each other, and they're taking up a good like 6 feet across of this bed, and most of it and spilling over significantly. They're very happy. So I'm hopeful we'll get at least a few batches of chile verde out of that. You can see the patty pan have sort of taken over my path here. That's okay. I do have, so I had asked a friend for some sungold starts to root. I put them in there and there. It's kind of hard to tell the difference between that and the tomatilla, but I do have cages. And then there was a volunteer tomato there, and the volunteer tomato is actually a good 2 feet off the ground. So we'll see. It is starting to flower. We'll see what it produces and if it gives us any late fruit. Over here we're also lots of kale. I need to start harvesting and freezing kale. Lots and lots of kale. And this kale, if you remember, this was a chaos garden where I had planted all sorts of greens. The kale was tucked in there, and as the other greens got pulled out and pulled away, both the Swiss chard, which is right here, and then the multiple kale plants were able to get big and take over. This spot right here has Brussels sprouts in it. I planted 5 and it looks like 3 have survived. And I can't remember, I think I have put some Brussels sprouts in some other places too. But the peppers that are here are my Anaheim peppers. I have only harvested about 4 or 5 peppers off of those 3 plants. If you watched my pepper video, you know these 3 are not planted close enough together, and they just won't produce as much fruit. More kale on this side. This time it was, what was planted there? I don't remember what was planted there, but the same thing. The kale was tucked in and stayed small until the other plant had become exhausted, and then now they're huge and yeah, need to freeze some kale. Do you have other ways that you like to preserve kale? I have only made kale chips once. I need to try it again. I remember us being so about them, but maybe we'll try that again. The cranberry beans have finally decided to take off after all season, so that tells me that they just like some cooler weather. So there are some cranberry beans on there. You can see, look how pretty they are. Aren't those pretty? And we'll just see how this goes until the frost hits. The celery that I tucked in from the root of a harvested celery from another gardener's garden is doing great. And then these are the 2 tomatoes, the sungolds, that I grew from seed. So we're having a race between the 2 over here that I grew from clippings and the 2 I grew from seed within days of each other. And right now the ones from clippings are a little bit bigger. These beans that are growing up, the sunflower stalks, are also the same. I just don't think they liked the heat. They are finally taking off and doing something. These 2 basil plants are my 2 main basil plants that I'm harvesting from. They are doing great. This fennel was growing for the root, but this particular one doesn't like where it is, and it's just putting up a lot of fronds, and that's fine too. They're delicious, and I've dried a lot, and we use that as an herb. All right, over to the tomato garden, or the tomato bed. The tomatoes are well over my head. They're probably 8 feet tall, and some of them. And we are well into tomato season, and there are beautiful ripe tomatoes coming in pretty much every day, every other day. I did end up stocking or tying the bamboo poles together into tripods, because as the fruit ripened, they got so heavy that they were tipping over. So I will be reconsidering this particular way of growing. I think I've talked about how I don't think I got the poles deep enough in the ground, and yeah, we'll be thinking about other ways to support these tomatoes, but I am appreciating having better access to them than I did when I grew them in cages. My most prolific tomato this year is definitely the pineapple. It is a new favorite, and I will be growing it again. Look at this. I don't know what variety this one is, but look at this tomato. Look how big it is. So far our biggest tomato has been 1 pound, 7 ounces. And we've hit that multiple times, and it's starting to become a joke that we have we just keep hitting that over and over. Behind me, we've got a purple basil that I wanted to show you. Oh, the lighting. Let me see if I can get into better lighting. She's just so pretty. There we go. With a watermelon vine thinking it wants to come over the top. You go off to the side there, friend. And the sugar baby watermelons that I planted in here, I don't know if they're not getting enough sun. I'm not sure what's going on. They flower and they're not fruiting. So we'll see what happens, but we're pretty late in the season and we're probably not going to get watermelons off of these. But I won't dig them up until the frost kills them off. I don't have, unless I decide to put cabbage in there. We'll see. This bed has already been switched over to the fall bed, and these seedlings, this is Napa cabbage in here. There are broccoli starts and purple sprouting broccoli. There are some other brassicas in here, but mostly Napa cabbage and purple sprouting broccoli. There are beets. These are just about ready to be harvested, and then there's a couple more that still need to be harvested, but in there under the arch is another succession of beets. The eggplant is doing so well. They're just multiple fruits. I just harvested yesterday, and there are still probably another, I don't know, half dozen or more eggplants on there ready to be harvested. This pumpkin, I'll tell you what, it's the first time I've successfully grown a pumpkin. The vine produced one pumpkin, even though it flowered multiple times, and it just isn't ready to harvest, and I keep thinking it is, and it gets bigger, and hopefully hopefully its tendril has died, but its stem has not. And if we're only going to get one, I'm going to err on the side of caution. I really want to make sure that it's ripe when we harvest it. The first plantings of the white martini cucumber are starting to die back a little bit, but as you can see, it's still looking pretty healthy. So that's just 2 cucumbers. They've produced more cucumbers than I think 20 plants did last year. The Malabar spinach is looking so beautiful. Climbing up this arch, I just love that. And the yard-long cucumbers, which are another favorite of ours this year. It's new to us. We would definitely want to grow it again. Let's see. They are very prolific, and these cucumbers stay crunchy for a very long time. We do have some other cucumbers, are a second succession planted in here. There is one white martini and then another variety that I think it's like a market more, but they just aren't as good as the white martinis and the yard longs. Those will definitely become a favorite, or have become a favorite, and will continue to make an appearance in our garden. Across the row, the winter squash is doing great. There are many large and medium-sized spaghetti squash in this bed. I haven't made it to the back of the bed yet to see if there's acorn squash, but I imagine there are. This extra bed also is putting on spaghetti squash. There's one laying in the grass right there. And then the peppers are just doing everything that I hoped they would. I'm delighted with this way of growing peppers, and this will continue to be the way that I grow them. And that's it for my late August garden tour. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it helpful. If you have questions about the garden or about anything else, let me know in the comments, and I will talk to you next time.